In the spring of 2019, Sir David Attenborough was accused of deceiving viewers when he claimed, in his Netflix documentary film Our Planet, that hundreds of walrus had fallen off Siberian cliff tops as a result of recent low summer sea ice blamed on climate change.
So just like you had before, they told you the walruses, they told you the polar bears, they can't swim and they're stuck on the ice caps. Look at this picture of a polar bear on an ice cap. He's just floating out in the sea because climate change. He's just alone on his island, this iconic image. That was complete bullshit. Polar bears can swim incredibly well. They did the same thing with the walruses. So they filmed the scene. We'll learn about it a little bit more about it, but I'm gonna let this video roll. I think they might show the actual scene of the walruses flying off the cliff. And remember, these are geared towards children. Actual children and adult children, which I guess the social engineering is geared to make adults feel like children as well, right? Adults hear normies, boomers even, they hear David Attenborough's voice and they travel back to like the 1980s nature documentaries that they're watching. They travel back to the 2000s when they watched, what was that freaking thing called? Not Blue Planet. He did Blue Planet, Planet Earth. When they watched Planet Earth with their little millennial grandkids. Everybody has these fond memories of these wildlife documentaries, and they're always narrated by the same man's voice, right? And they always come with this undertone of humans are so bad. These animals were just in heaven. They're so innocent. They're so good. But the nasty humans came around, and the nasty humans are ruining it for all the animals. The humans are wrecking it for the animals. Right? That's always the narrative of these documentaries.
These mass gatherings of walrus are now happening almost every year.
Yeah, these mass gatherings of walruses are what happen when walruses are successful breeding and have a bunch of food to eat and are fruitful and multiplying. But they're gonna watch how they spin it. Look at this. Look at all these walruses multiplying, feeding their young, fertile, healthy. Watch the spin.
So the lives of walruses, like those of polar bears and seals, are changing. All are living at the frontier of climate change.
Oh, look at this walrus. It's so depressed. This walrus is overcome with grief that Mother Earth is dying. The walrus lays down in the waves and resigns to die alone, thinking perhaps if I stop exhaling toxic CO2, Mother Earth will breathe a sigh of relief. It's like, oh, look at this poor walrus. It's laying down in the water. It just wants to die. It just wants to die. It's
and
so
all
sad.
Are suffering as a consequence.
Everybody's suffering.
However, evidence from the scientific literature showed that this was not a new phenomenon. For more than 100 years, walrus have taken to land during the ice-free season. There is also evidence from the 1990s that walrus naturally fall from cliff tops even without the menacing threat of polar bears, aircraft, or drones.
Some of these walruses they're showing, they're not dying. They're rolling down like freaking bowling balls. So, oh no, they're so sad that they're throwing themselves off the cliff in pure despair. The walruses know that nobody was listening to poor little Greta. And after hearing of Greta's forgotten journey, the walruses all jumped off the cliff to die quickly before the climate changed and killed them all.
It is a sight both disturbing and puzzling. Massive walruses plummeting to their deaths along the Alaska coast.
The footage Attenborough used to make his Netflix case seemed to have come from a well-documented incident in September 2017 when walrus had been driven over cliffs by about 20 polar bears.
So polar bears were driving the walruses off the cliff. The walruses that were so successful in reproducing and multiplying, that were breeding so much, that were so fertile, full of good food and healthy, that their population was so high here. And these polar bears are coming for a feast.
It's just so heartbreaking.
However, both Netflix director Sophie Lanphier and cameraman Jamie McPherson insisted there were no polar bears in the vicinity at the time they shot their film footage.
So they insist there's no polar bears. Specifically insisted.
They're exhausted because they're having to swim 100 miles now to get to food, and then coming back here because it's the only place to sleep. They used to sleep on the ice, dive down, eat food, sleep on the ice. Easy.
Back in April 2019, it seemed unlikely that polar bears were not involved.
D levels of an institutionalized elder.
Now it's abundantly clear that they were. Footage of the events on the Arctic coast of Siberia for the Netflix production was shared with the BBC and used in Attenborough's new TV series, 7 Worlds, 1 Planet.
The bears have got up here too.
So this is how little respect they have for you. They'll straight up lie to you and then release the footage that proves they lied to you. That's what they'll do. They will straight up lie to you. Show you the footage that proves they lied to you and tell you you're crazy for noticing. Tell you you're nuts for noticing. People are freaking out. 2 p.m. curfew, that was what happened here. That was what happened. You could only drive every other day. I'm still only supposed to drive every other day. I don't listen to the guidelines because we live in a rural area and it's not really regulated here. It's insane, though. Polygon says IMF paying off the third world nations to abuse their populations. Exactly. And the people wouldn't accept these IMF loans. They wouldn't accept their government accepting these IMF loans before. Back in October. And they've had a huge battle against the government where they had the military shooting people down in the streets. There's videos of some of the most horrific violence I've ever seen in my life. Witnessed the guy on video get sniped in his head by police. No charges brought against any of the militarized police forces that were abusing the population during these weeks in October. Nothing. But guess what? The IMF then gave a big fat loan. Right? They had already given this loan with conditions. They gave another big fat loan with the COVID thing. And guess where a lot of that money's going?
I got my D levels tested once.
Not D level testing.
And I had the D levels of an institutionalized elder. These people who are like in nursing homes.
Thank you. It's not going to raising Dr. G's vitamin D levels. It's not going to that. That money, guess where that money's going? That money's going to more weapons for police. That money's going to more tools for the military to use on the people once they realize what's been going on the last few months and try to do the same thing again. So they bought a year of time. This whole year, as far as South America goes, you had a major backlash against kind of neoliberal policies and puppet government dictatorships that are happening down in South America. You had a big backlash, and that's being played up, and that's being stirred up yet again. So that money, all those billions of dollars, guess where it goes? It goes into the pockets of a bunch of corrupt politicians and corporate heads and leaders, corporate leaders, and even local politicians get to line their pockets with those billions of dollars that pump into the South American countries for these crises. And it's going to go towards more
teens in Hawaii. Right, and you just imagine them shirtless all day.
It's not going towards shirtless skateboarding teens in Hawaii for Dr. Greger, who now lives in Hawaii.
With skateboarding teens.
Skateboarding teams. Shirtless all day. Mm-hmm. You just imagine them shirtless all day like Dr. Greger does. Strange times. Yeah. All right. Here's the footage. There were polar bears. Spoiler alert. Attenborough lied.
The BBC installment shows that falling walruses had been driven off cliff tops by polar bears, but this action was not included in the Netflix film.
Just the polar bear's presence is enough to spook the walrus.
Just the polar bear's presence was enough to spook the walrus, who are very afraid.
Skateboarding teens in Hawaii. Right, and you just imagine them shirtless all day.
Right.
The BBC episode also depicts the falling walruses provoking a stampede of animals still on the beach, and explained that many walrus were trampled to death in a frantic rush to the water.
Because of climate change. Because of
Skateboarding
climate
teens in
change.
Hawaii. Right, and you just imagine them shirtless all day.
Right.
One of the perks of global warming was the abundance of skateboarding teens In Hawaii.
On the rocks, those on the beach stampede, and more lives are lost.
This previously unreleased footage contradicts the account of events given in the Netflix film and the stories subsequently told by Lanfear and McPherson since the film's release.
See, what kind of piece of shit is gonna blatantly lie knowing that they're lying? They showed the footage and it proved that they were lying. What kind of lowlife are you to just blatantly lie like that? Well, you're the BBC. That's the BBC. Jimmy Savile's home for how many years? The BBC.
Attenborough seems to be tacitly admitting that the claims he made in the Netflix film and the denials that polar bears caused the events were untrue. The field crew must have been aware that polar bears had frightened Walrus over the cliff at this location because they filmed it happening. This new footage shows that not only were the walrus most likely spooked by polar bears, but that the filming itself may have contributed to walrus deaths.
Oh, what a surprise. Not only could they have stopped it, but they may have even caused it. They may have engineered it.
The film crew was situated at or near the beach, which was the only safe route down from the cliff. Their presence at that location, with their drone hovering above the cliff, could have been enough to spook a few more agitated walrus into a panic. It now seems apparent that the film crew withheld their involvement with the polar bear stalking incident until now, and that the Netflix film badly misled the audience. Polar bears were indeed involved in these walrus deaths, but so too were the crew and the drones used to film the action. Lack of sea ice did not precipitate these events, despite both films claiming this as the causal factor.
These events only occur once every few years. But as the world warms and the ice retreats still further, they may become more frequent.
People are so stupid that they don't ask questions when they watch these documentaries. Wait, lack of ice is making them jump off of cliffs? They don't have enough ice? There's no ice anywhere in sight in this huge panoramic wide view drone shot. There's no ice anywhere. There are walruses that live in places where there's seasonal ice. There are walruses that live in places where there's no ice. But this is how dumb they think the audience is, right?